Hi and welcome. This is Homebody Rundown and I'm HR. This video is mostly cooking, a little baking that I did between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I thought I'd film a lot more, but just never got around to it. Life was a little busy. We are a family of 5. I have 3 kids and they are all young adults. The 2 oldest were home for most of this on college break. And we do not eat much meat, so this is mostly vegetarian or pescatarian food, but we're not very particular, so sometimes there are ingredients that are not vegetarian that are used. And I am not a recipe follower. Sometimes I find inspiration or I'm loosely following a recipe, and if that is the case, I will try to link it in the description if it's available online. Or if it's from a book, I will list the book that I got it from. Starting off with breakfast burritos, I have eggs, white onion that I've diced up, roasted red pepper. This is spinach. I tried to chop it up the night before in the food processor when I had that out. It did not work well. There are still some full-size leaves in there. For seasoning into the eggs, I am adding a little roasted garlic powder, but I don't add salt and pepper and other spices until I've poured it into the pan because it just doesn't distribute well in the egg. I did mix in the spinach, and you can see here there are some large leaves from the spinach. So I did get a knife and slice those up a little bit more just so there wouldn't be huge spinach pieces in here. Sprinkling the onion over the top. And you could mix this all together. I have done that before, but I just found it's easier, or it's more well distributed if I just sprinkle everything over. Red pepper, I added in pepper mix that I make, which is black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. And then I'm just trying to smush those in a little bit. Going to pan fry these non-meat sausages. I have avocado oil in the pan, and this is 2 boxes worth. Just cook that, broke it up, and I did not add any seasoning to it. Here's how the egg bake looks coming out of the oven. I had random Havarti cheese in the freezer, so I pulled that out, and I just laid the slices and pieces over the top after I pulled it out of the oven so it will melt. Cut that into pieces, and I'm just sprinkling in the sausage. Now, if I had planned ahead better, I could have cooked the sausage and then just mixed it into the egg mixture and baked it all together, but this worked out fine as well. Getting these rolled up into some whole wheat tortillas. I made these on Thanksgiving break so that the boys could take them back to school with them, and then I kept a few here as well. We had a lot of food at Thanksgiving, so there were plenty of veggies left over. I am going to roast these in the oven with olive oil, salt, and that pepper mix. And that is black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. I really like these shallow Pyrex baking dishes just because they're not as bulky and they fit in the dishwasher a little easier. They do not have lids though, so I just use these as, a baking sheet essentially, but I like the glass. Here's how it looks. Roasted up cauliflower, baby carrots, tomatoes, and broccoli. I did them separate because I wasn't sure if I'd pull the tomatoes and broccoli sooner, but it all cooked fine together. I do have a convection roast setting on my oven. Now I'm going to make a soup with just random things. I have some of this vegetarian broth powder I want to use up. I've had it for a while. I found some kidney beans. I had a few chickpeas that I made that were in the refrigerator. Coleslaw mix that was leftover peas, and some parsley. Into this pan, I am cooking down a non-meat burger. That gives it that meat flavor, which some family members really like. And white onion, olive oil, and added in some seasonings at this point. I didn't want really long shreds of cabbage in here, so I am running them through the food processor to make them a lot smaller. For more seasoning, I'm adding in the vegetarian broth powder and a not chicken flavored bouillon cubes. So it tastes a little bit like chicken, but it's not using any animal products. I added in roasted veggies and water to make that broth and the beans. So I am going to let this simmer for a while with all these veggies and let everything get soft and make a really flavorful broth. And I'm just eyeballing this. I just keep adding water to make sure that it's going to, not burn or get too thick. Adding in the parsley towards the end and the peas. The peas were fully cooked, and looking for those bay leaves that I put in earlier, and I'll get those pulled out as well. This turned out excellent. The broth was amazing. It had really good flavor, and I loved all the veggies, and I like to put beans and or legumes in pretty much all soups that I make. I'm no nutritionist, but I do like to get the added iron and protein in there if possible. Put a little Parmesan on mine, and yeah, this was really good. I like to store soups like this in small 2-cup Pyrex containers in the refrigerator, so it's a really easy grab and go lunch. Here I have soaked pinto beans overnight, and I am going to get those drained and rinsed and into the Instant Pot so I can cook these down and make refried beans. This is a staple in our house. We have refried beans pretty much every week, I would say. Now, I don't always use pinto beans. Sometimes I'll make refried beans using black beans. And here's how they look after coming out of the Instant Pot. These beans are getting a little old, so sometimes I have to let them go a little longer to make sure they are soft enough. I do take out some of the liquid as this is cooling down, and I reserve that in case I need to add more liquid back in. It really starts to thicken up after you make the refried beans and it begins to cool. I almost always end up adding some liquid back in. And I do not run these through a food processor or get them really smooth. My family is not particular about that. Mostly I want it cohesive enough to just make a quesadilla. I like to add lime juice, and I also cook these with some garlic powder and onion powder and salt. And I will add more, like you can see here, after I taste it and just see how it is. And I know this looks like a lot of liquid in these, but it is still warm. And you can see here, when it cools down, it is much thicker. And I ended up adding back in all of the cooking liquid this time. And I'll mix that through and then get these cooled down and into, I prefer to store this stuff in glass. I pretty much try to store everything in glass, and I'll get these in the refrigerator, and I'll use these for quesadillas later in the week. Cooking up some pasta. I really like this whole wheat penne from Whole Foods, and if I could find a smaller whole wheat pasta, I would buy that, but I can't find an organic one around, at least at the stores where I shop in my local area. I have more veggies that I am going to roast, and I am using the same pans that I used to roast a bunch of potatoes. I had a 10-pound bag, I think, of Yukons, and they were getting a little soft, so I went ahead and roasted all of them. I'll store some of those in the freezer. But I had those pans out with the parchment paper, so I am going to chop up these veggies and go ahead and roast them real quick in the oven. I spray them with avocado oil and the pepper mix, and I will add salt. These do not take very long. I have a convection roast feature on my oven, and I like to use that when I'm roasting veggies. I occasionally, standing back, I will open the door while they're roasting and let some of that steam out. But yeah, it goes pretty quickly. Also diced up red onion and white onion, and I'm going to use that for a few things, but I did some large pieces and added those onto the roasting pans as well. And I did not let these roast really long this time, so you can let them get a little more color and brown on them, which is great flavor. But I am making a pasta salad, but I thought I would try roasting the veggies first. And I'm going to add chickpeas to make this more of a complete meal. I did rough chop the pasta because it is so long. Adding in the veggies, I had green olives that I also diced up, crushed red pepper flakes. I would add more personally, but not everyone wants it that spicy. And normally I make my own pasta sauce, or not pasta sauce, pasta dressing, but I had this Newman's Own Italian dressing in the refrigerator and I needed to use it up, and it's very convenient to just have that. And here is how it looks. This was really good. I really like this. This was after Christmas and we had leftovers of spinach dip and cottage cheese. I had a couple non-meat sausages in the refrigerator and very ripe tomatoes. So I decided to use part of the penne pasta and make a kind of a creamy spinach pasta bake. This is red onion that I had diced up the day before, I think, for the pasta salad. Into this pan I have olive oil, the pepper mix, and I'll add salt. This is an enameled cast iron pan. I really like it because it is enameled, so I can add tomato, like more acidic things than I really want to add to my regular cast iron. And because it's cast iron, I can just put this directly into the oven. I added in frozen spinach as well to give it a little more green. And as I go, I add seasoning and I will add more oil if I think it needs it. I also had roasted garlic, and I add quite a bit of garlic. Everyone in the family seems to be okay with that. And then for the creamy sauce part, I'm adding in the cottage cheese and spinach dip. I don't know if you're supposed to bake with spinach dip that's pre-made from the store, but it seemed fine. And I forgot to mention I also added in a low sodium bouillon cube. And then here I added a little water as well, just to make it a creamier sauce. This is sharp cheddar cheese. I am not adding in very much, just a little to stir through, and I put the rest over the top, and now I'll put this in the oven under the broiler for just a couple minutes. And this was excellent. I have to say the tomatoes were a really good addition to this. I think without them it would have just seemed a little heavy, but here's how it looks. And yeah, very good sauce, very creamy. Really enjoyed this, and obviously I do have some picky eaters. Not everyone ate this, but it was pretty good. I don't like seeing the little cubes of cottage cheese. Those are not very attractive, but hey, I used it up and it didn't go to waste. Now I'm going to make some fresh oatmeal raisin cookies. These cookies do have a lot of ingredients, but I make them so often that I know pretty much all the ingredients to pull out, and I usually get this all set up ahead of time, maybe the night before or in the morning, so it's just ready to go when I have time to make them. I did run out of raisins, so I did stop at Aldi. Our town got an Aldi a couple months ago. I've been in a handful of times, maybe like 3-4 times, and I knew they had raisins, so I just went there because I did not feel like going to Costco, which is where I normally buy raisins. I did not let the butter sit out long enough to soften on the counter, so I did microwave it for a little bit just to get it soft enough to run through the KitchenAid. Got all of the wet ingredients in, and now I'm adding in the dry. This is a mixture of quick oats and regular oats, or old-fashioned oats, and I am adding in flaxseed. I don't always add in, obviously it is ground flaxseed. I don't add it in every time, but I'm only using all-purpose flour on these today. Normally I replace part of the all-purpose with whole wheat, but instead I just added a little extra flaxseed, and it tends to make for a softer cookie if I just use the all-purpose flour. Getting in the raisins and using a combination today of mini chips. These are white chocolate and semi-sweet chocolate. I make these cookies on an air-baked cookie sheet, and these are some that I got when we got married 25 years ago, and they do not have edges all the way around. So you can see here I spray them just so the parchment paper does not slide off, because I've had the cookies go right down in that space between the door and the oven, and that's not fun. Anyway, here is how they looked when they were finished. And they were good. They were soft cookies. However, I did not like using the mini chips in here. I think it's just, they're too small. You don't really recognize that you're getting like a bite of chocolate. And I do, in these oatmeal raisin cookies, prefer white chocolate. So if I have them next time, I will just use a large white chocolate chip instead. But yeah, these were good. They're still soft in the middle and a little crispier around the edges, but not too much. This is just how we prefer them. And the little white chocolate chips did not seem to really melt very well either. So, but maybe that's just how white chocolate is. I don't know that I've paid attention before. Made some good food over the last month. Wish I had filmed more, but really liked the breakfast burritos, and the soup was really excellent as well. So hope there were some ideas or inspiration here for you, and as always, thank you for watching.